we're back on the LiberalOasis radio show, WHMP, news, information, and the arts. Bill Scher with you on a glorious Saturday holiday weekend. Hope you're having a good holiday break. Don't forget every Tuesday, including this Tuesday, in our holiday break, drinking liberally and knitting liberally. Knitting liberally 5 p.m. at the Yellow Sofa in downtown Northampton, 5 p.m., followed by drinking liberally at 6:30 p.m. at the Paradise City Tavern. All are always welcome. So we are less than a month away from the inauguration. We're only about a week or so away from the new Congress being sworn in on January 6th. The hope is that the what's called an economic stimulus package or an economic recovery program, possibly of a size of around $850 billion, maybe more, is being talked about, being passed by Congress before the swearing in, so Obama could potentially sign it into law on day one. However, there was a recent article in the New York Times where anonymous Obama aides were trying to tamp down expectation that such a bill could be signed into law on day one because they are concerned about delaying tactics from the Senate conservative minority. And that minority is made pretty small. It's either going to be, it's probably going to be 41 Republicans. We still have an outstanding Senate seat. So we got 58 Democrats we are sure of, and that includes Bernie Sanders and Joe Lieberman, independents of slightly different stripes. But even Lieberman is on the Obama bandwagon these days because he's generally about himself and whichever way the wind is blowing. But Minnesota remains outstanding. Franken looks good. Landslide Al with about a 46-vote lead right now, and Norm Coleman losing court challenge after court challenge, but it does not look like it will be fully resolved by January 6th, and so it's unclear when Franken, presuming he maintains his lead, which most observers think he will, unclear when he would actually be sworn in to vote, because you need, if the conservative minority is going to filibuster, you need 60 votes in hand, 60 affirmative yes votes to cut off debate and move to an up or down vote. When Senate Republicans filibuster the auto rescue plan, they actually only had 35 senators voting no, 52 voting yes. And that even doesn't count Harry Reid, who had to vote no for complicated procedural reasons, even though he supported it. Since they didn't have the 60 votes in hand, that was not enough, even though that minority was really, really small. So you need every vote you can get, potentially, unless that 82% approval rating of Obama's, strikes, deep fear even into enough Republicans where they say, do I want to be the person that stops the economic recovery program from being put into place as soon as possible? Do I want to be that guy? I think it's very unlikely that the two main Republicans, Susan Collins and Olympia Snowe, that's not in their bailiwick to be obstructionists. They tend to go where the wind blows. I'm not trying to praise their senatorial records. I have lots of problems with them, but I do think they're not of the ilk to be obstructionists in the face of public opinion. Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania, also someone who is probably likely to not filibuster, if not necessarily be a positive vote. So you may not need Franken, but they don't necessarily want to take anything for granted. Every vote's going to count in this Senate. They're always going to be around that line of 60 votes for a lot of things. So how the public opinion debate plays out is very critical. It's not just about numbers, as I've talked about in past shows, and you and I have a role to play in that. I mentioned on last week's program how the right wing and CNN had taken this cheap shot against infrastructure proposals from the U.S. Conference of Mayors. This very breathy report from CNN, $300 million of pork in the U.S. Conference of Mayors request. When, one, they don't know what's pork and what isn't. They didn't do any actual investigation of these projects. They're just looking at a one-line description and making a snap judgment about the merits of it. But more importantly, the $300 million was literally 0.5% of the $73 billion proposal. So that's the kind of quality journalism, all these journalists complaining about not getting good information from the Obama transition team. Why don't you give us some good information and do your jobs appropriately before you start complaining about others? Now, I wrote a piece about this, and I took a swipe at the right-wing National Taxpayers Union because they were the only voice that CNN relied on to make the case that these projects were somehow pork. And interestingly enough, when I wrote about this at ourfuture.org and Huffington Post, the chief flack for the NTU, Pete Sepp, got a little bit of a tizzy and placed a long, rambling comment on my blog post. So I thought I'd share that with this. I share this with you to give you a sense of where the conservative movement is at right now. So Pete Sepp tries to sound like he's being a reasonable sort. He says, the point, these projects are being sold as a way to get the country back on its feet again. This in turn prompts two analytical questions. This is Pete Sepp, National Taxpayers Union, being analytical. Number one, do the specific projects contained in the plan, in fact, fit the description quoted above, that these projects would help the economy and the environment? Number two, is the president's premise that the government spending on infrastructure and other community-level projects has a stimulative effect valid? Two legitimate questions from Pete Sepp. Pete Sepp, National Taxpayers Union, continues. CNN's report was directed at the first question, and while you described the pork in the document as minuscule, the numbers show otherwise. Do the more than 750 projects referring to sidewalks, trails, and bike paths sound just peachy keen to me? A certified outdoor lover? Why, yes. Pete Sepp, such a defender of the outdoors. Let's set aside the question of whether it's moral to make struggling urban families pay for my walking trail out in the suburbs. Will they, in fact, help the small business of Main Street America produce lasting economic and environmental benefits to the nation? Not unless you build bike paths to every office building in America and start transporting durable goods on the back of bicycles. I suppose some business owners would love to have freshly poured sidewalks for their customers, but I thought you guys hated conspicuous consumption. That's Pete Sepp for you from National Taxpayers Union. Now, in the course of that part of his rant, did he refute the numbers that only 0.5% of the dollars the mayors were proposing constitute pork under CNN's and their definition? He did not. He asserted a fresh number, 750 projects referring to sidewalks, trails, and bike paths. Sidewalks, trails, and bike paths obviously are silly. Who needs to walk safely? Who needs to have outdoor recreation for their health? Who needs to have a bike path so they have some way to get around that's not through a car? Of course, if bike paths can't go to every office building in America, then it's obviously ridiculous. Well, I guess the entire interstate highway system is ridiculous. Is I-91 going right into some office building? I don't think so. It's connected to a larger transport. Do I have to spell out this ridiculousness to you, fair listener? Are you as slow as Pete Sepp that I have to explain that pieces of transportation infrastructure connect to others? So through a combination of cars, rail, biking, and walking, we can get places? But that's the way conservatives are going to play the game. It was a straw man rampage Pete Sepp went on.